It started with a quiet rumble beneath my boots. Not thunder, not machines, just the steady, ancient groan of pressure building. I stood at the edge of the dam, staring down at the waterline that was now inches from the spillway's lip. This dam, my dam, was never meant to hold back so much for so long. And yet, here we were. 35 pristine homes now sat below me, right where my great-grandfather used to run cattle, right where the deer used to drink. The sun was setting behind the ridge, turning the clouds orange and casting long shadows over a neighborhood that should never have existed. That I didn't want it to come to this. I really didn't. I tried the courts. I tried reason. I tried kindness. But kindness got laughed out of HOA meetings, and reason got buried in paperwork stamped with the county's approval. What they didn't realize, what they refused to believe, was that some people still care about what's theirs. Some people will defend it, even if they have to get their hands dirty. So I walked to the release valve and wrapped my hand around the lever. The sound of crickets mixed with the low hiss of pressure. My heart pounded, not from fear, but from certainty. When I opened the valve, it wasn't rage that I felt. It was justice. The water roared out like it had been waiting all this time, like it, too, had been ignored. Within minutes, it began pooling in places where no water should have reached. Lights flickered in those houses below as panic began to ripple through their perfect little rows. I didn't stay to watch the whole thing. I'd seen enough. I turned, walked away, and left the dam to do what it was always meant to do. This land was more than dirt to me. It was blood, sweat, and memory. My grandfather used to tell me stories about how he and his brothers carved out the pond with nothing but mules and muscle. The dam? That was a family project. My great-uncle engineered it during the war, kept logs of the flow, monitored the water tables, and even built the spillway by hand. For generations, it was ours. We fished in the reservoir, grazed cattle nearby, and harvested pecans every fall. This was home. Legally, the property was in my name. Had been for nearly 2 decades. I paid taxes. I maintained it. I improved it. But over time, the town started growing. People moved in, and what used to be sleepy fields and cow trails turned into cul-de-sacs and cookie-cutter homes. At first, it didn't bother me. Progress is natural. I even sold a few acres near the main road to pay for repairs on the dam after a heavy flood in '09. But I never touched the inner 40. That land was sacred, protected, fenced. I kept it wild, like my family wanted. But one summer, while I was working a job out of state, something changed. I came back to find strange tire marks near the old oak, new survey flags, and a portable toilet. That's when I knew something was wrong. At the county office, they told me development permits had been approved. I laughed. On whose land? I asked. They just pointed to a parcel map, newly updated, and sure enough, the inner 40 was gone, reassigned, rezoned. The dam was labeled Community Pond. That's how the HOA story started. I remember the first time I met someone from the HOA. It was a man named Derek, tight polo shirt, clipboard, and an attitude like he ran the town. He was doing a walkthrough of the area and told me he was so excited about how the new homes were blending with nature. I told him he was standing on my land. He chuckled, said it had all been handled. Apparently, the developers working with the HOA had submitted old survey maps from the '80s, and somehow, magically, my property line vanished in bureaucratic red tape. 35 houses went up fast, real fast. I wasn't even notified. My mailbox, which had stood on the county line for years, was removed. A private security guard even stopped me from accessing my own dam, claiming I was trespassing. They renamed my reservoir Maple Pond, put benches around it, even hosted a barbecue next to it on the 4th of July. I watched from a distance, jaw clenched, as kids ran around with sparklers next to a dam I'd rebuilt with my bare hands after a hurricane. HOA newsletters began referring to it as a community-maintained feature. When I raised objections, they sent me cease and desist letters, told me I was a danger to the neighborhood. They even tried to fine me for putting up a new fence on my side of the boundary. I knew I had to fight back, but I underestimated just how deep the HOA's roots had already grown. My first lawyer was a guy named Mike. He was honest, told me straight up that these kinds of cases were hard. Once property lines are in question and homes are built, courts tend to side with stability over correction, he warned. Still, we filed. I submitted original deeds, GPS coordinates, even old aerial photos. I had it all. Or so I thought. The developers hit back with claims of easement rights, arguing that my land had been partially deeded away during my grandfather's estate dissolution, something I knew for a fact never happened. They presented a map, showing a public green space stretching across the dam. It was a lie, but the county had already stamped it that we fought for months. Every hearing ended in delays. Every motion we filed got buried in red tape. Meanwhile, construction continued. More homes, more mailboxes. One family even installed a swing set right where I'd buried our old family dog, under a weeping willow. Things got worse. Someone slashed my truck tires. My irrigation system was vandalized. I reported everything, but the sheriff just shrugged, said it was a civil dispute. Even my lawyer started sounding defeated. They've got money, he said. They can drag this out forever. Then came the letter that broke me. Certified mail. Inside was a statement from the HOA, claiming I owed them $8,200 in back dues for the maintenance of Maple Pond. I stared at the paper for a long time. My land, my dam, my taxes. And now they wanted me to pay them to take care of it. I realized then that the system wasn't going to save me. The courts weren't going to rescue me. And the HOA certainly wasn't going to stop. I wasn't just fighting for land anymore. I was fighting for the truth. And for once, I decided to fight the way they didn't expect. The final straw came when I found their contractor drilling into the base of the dam. Not repairing it, modifying it. Trying to connect their drainage lines to my reservoir so they could irrigate their manicured lawns. I lost it. I screamed. Called the sheriff. He showed up, talked to the contractor, then pulled me aside and said, "They've got a permit." Permit? On my land? That night, I couldn't sleep. I stood at the edge of the dam with a flashlight, staring down at the still water. So calm, so unaware. I thought about how my family built this from scratch, about the laughter that once echoed here, about what was being stolen, piece by piece, smile by smile. The next morning, I tried one last time. I walked into the HOA office. I showed them my documents. I told them I was willing to settle, even walk away, as long as they acknowledged what they did. The woman at the front desk smiled and said, "Sir, if you don't leave, I'm calling security." I didn't make the decision lightly. This was my land, yes, but I wasn't out for destruction. I was out for justice. So I consulted one more lawyer, off the books. I showed him everything. He scratched his head and said, "Technically, you still own the dam. If you wanted to drain the reservoir, there's nothing illegal about that. It's your water.